The 2017 MLP movie is a 2017 animated movie directly tied to the fourth generation of the franchise, Friendship is Magic. That, getting out of the way, is good. However, it's another case of me finding a movie to be just good and not great. But considering the point when the movie came out, it was honestly a major surprise to me. Given the other animated movies that came out at the time, even excluding films that were only straight to DVD, let me put it like this. Of the animated movies that came out in 2017 that I actually watched, only 6 of them I actually like. And even only 3 of those particular films that I liked were generally liked by the public, while 3 of the other ones were divisive. The Lego Batman movie, the Captain Underpants movie, and Coco, while Cars 3, this movie, and the Lego Ninjago movie generally have people divided or worse. But this movie, more than the other animated films that came out that year, do something that those films lack, and that would be the fact that this movie does have charm to help it out in the long run. Whereas with most of the other ones, they felt very hollow as well as bland, while the others ranged from being just plain bad to being egregiously bad. Not to mention, this movie was a big surprise for me because I was really thinking that this movie was gonna be either just okay or decent. But I actually ended up enjoying this movie, especially after a lot of the other animated films that 2017 provided, but the last time that I watched this movie was 2019. Looking back at this movie years later, what do I think about it now? It's good. Not great or even spectacular, especially for reasons I'm gonna get to shortly, but charming in its own way. So, this movie takes place in Cairnrot. The characters are just about ready to prepare for the Friendship Festival before it gets interrupted by a pony with a broken horn named Tempest Shadow, whom, with the Storm King's guards, she takes everyone hostage while the main 6 have to travel across the land to find the hippogriffs in order for them to save their home. While they come across a bunch of new friends in the process, pretty much being similar to the Simpsons movie and the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. However, this movie does have its own twists and turns on this. To get the misconception with this movie out of the way, one issue with this movie that a lot of people have pointed out is that the film is very cliche, but to pull the rug out from everyone, something being cliche doesn't automatically make a film bad, as long as the film is able to make up for it in a lot of its other aspects. Me being someone who used to be like this, where I'd get onto something simply for the fact that it's been done before, I've learned over time to just see something for how it is on its own, and to only point out the fact that it's cliche when it's a major problem with the product in of itself. And tropes themselves are just that. Tropes. They're only a problem if the film has nothing to back it up. That's why I disliked both Rock Dog and Duck Duck Goose. Not only did they use tiring tropes, the movies themselves didn't do anything to save them, and as a result, left their stories being jumbled and predictable messes, and their characters were left being either bland or unlikable. When it comes to the MLPFIM movie, what this film has is charm and heart. Kind of like how I felt towards something like Storks, where that film's story and logic were very confusing and jumbled as well, but it had its characters and heart to save it. Though, I'd put this movie as being better because it doesn't have any annoyance and it has cohesion throughout. Though yes, there is a major issue that I do have with this movie, that being the story. The story is definitely the weakest aspect of the film, and that the film is very generic, as well as being rinse and repeat until we get to Mount Eris. I mean, the movie does feel like it was always meant for the big screen, unlike the Teacher's Pet movie, but it does still have some story issues. The movie basically checks off all the boxes on what animated movies based on TV shows do, being a road trip that the main characters go on in order to save their home from being destroyed or enslaved. Not to mention, this movie also has a second act breakup that is so infamous that it's been shared around the internet numerous times. And yeah, that was my issue when I first watched this movie as well. Not the worst second act breakup that I've ever seen in an animated movie. It isn't infuriating like the second act breakup in Monster Family, or forced like the second act breakup in The Boss Baby, but still worth noting nonetheless. Also, similarly to the Teacher's Pet movie, the film in general does have pretty unbalanced pacing, where the film jumps from one set piece to the other without a clear time frame, but the film starts to slow down as soon as we get to Mount Eris, and then the song One Small Thing was when the movie got to the hour mark and there were only 39 minutes left. And there are also issues issues with how this movie is as a film connected to the show. Given that around season 7, which is when this movie is supposed to take place, Fluttershy was learning to stand up for herself, especially in an episode called Fluttershy Leans In, only for the film to revert her back to her seasons 1 and 2 self. But the film is actually canon with the show, and it seems to take place after season 7, given that the season 8 premiere directly makes mention to the premiere taking place after the film. And speaking of which, how does this movie stand as a movie based on a series and on its own merits? That aspect is kinda debatable, because this movie does stay true to the series that it's a direct follow-up to, in spite of some characterization issues, and as a film itself, it does go easy on newcomers. The only time when they make a direct reference to anything from the show itself that people won't recognize without watching the show is with Mod Pie, as well as Rainbow Dash doing a sonic rainboom, but other than that, you don't need prior knowledge to the show to understand what's going on. But at the exact same time, unlike the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, where that show is iconic to the point where you don't need to introduce the characters to the audience for the viewers to know who they are, with the MLPFIM movie, the audience that the show is aiming for is a little more niche compared to SpongeBob, and the popularity was very unexpected. But those that don't watch or care about the show aren't gonna know who these characters are going in, despite doing something very similar to the first SpongeBob movie. But I'll give this movie some props for at least not making references to events from the show itself, whereas with the first Equestria Girls movie, you need knowledge of the season 3 finale before going into it. There's also a big misconception that people have given with this movie regarding the villain, Tempest Shadow, where she's basically redeemed in the movie when she's been incredibly hostile towards everyone that came into contact with her. I have to disagree with this, because unlike Starlight Glimmer in the season 5 finale, where she messed with time and only got put into the corner for her actions, deep down, Tempest is not completely irredeemable, because she only does the things that she does in this movie out of self-defense, and she's clearly hurting inside because of how traumatized she felt from that event as a child. And she's only doing what she did in this film due to the commands of the Storm King, because she's being tricked into believing that the Storm King is going to fix her horn, only to throw a curveball on her. As for the positives of the film itself, even though the movie is incredibly generic, the experience is more important than the concept. You can have a generic story but a wonderful execution, and a fantastic idea but a horrible execution. And with the MLPFIM movie, I did enjoy my experience while watching the movie, because the movie does have focus on what it wants to do with itself, and tries to be entertaining while not going overboard with it. And I'm pretty sure you guys remember when I talked about this movie in my best and worst 2017 animated movies part 1 list, which I had to delete due to copyright issues, when I talked about this movie on that particular list. The MLPFIM movie was number 6 on the best list as a reminder, but this movie's animation is absolutely beautiful, as it has a nice mixture of being colorful as well as being atmospheric at the same time. Though the animation is admittedly very jarring at the beginning of the film, having the 2D characters plastered over the CGI backgrounds. It eventually gets better around the time when the journey starts, but that is something to make note about. I also really like the songs in the film. The only issue I do have with them is that almost all of them sing about friendship, with only 3 of them deviating from that. But given the context that the sequences are attached to, it is necessary to have them in, but putting that aside, all of them are bangers, with none of them being forgettable. Even the Brave Little Toaster, which I also like, does have one forgettable song, while all the other songs were great. Even the last one being Rainbow, even though the one who sang it is repulsive. But remember, separating the art from the artist is a thing, is a beautiful song that caps the film off on a great note, definitely being one of my favorite end credit sequences that I've ever seen in any animated movie. So overall, while the MLPFIM movie is not a great film, it is a good movie that did put me in a good mood after watching. I doubt that this movie will be for everyone, given that unlike SpongeBob, the reactions are very divided, and the reactions to the film as well are also very divided. The recommendations that I do have for this movie are 50-50, where diehard fans will love it, while those that don't definitely will not like it. Though, just as a reminder, as a critic, I go into things with my own mindset to let my thoughts on things develop, and if I like or dislike a product that a lot of people like or dislike, I'm going to state my opinion on the show or movie no matter what someone thinks about it. Just like how there's a film that I dislike that a lot of people like, same thing goes for something that I like that others dislike too.
Everything